Hey, welcome back to our week 2 discussion of Job and grief. We are going to jump back into the conversation, and we're glad that you've joined us today. So, Lance, this is a question that I did give you before, but we want to just dive right into this question because we think that this is really important. And we haven't rehearsed the answers to this, so this is going to be an interesting, thought-provoking discussion, hopefully. So here's my question to you based on last week. Is God unjust in the book of Job?
Right. Yes. And, I mean, according to the prologue. But it's partly how you define justice, right? I mean, if it's fair, if it's about whether God is fair, God is definitely unfair to Job. He is only made to suffer like this because of his righteousness, because his righteousness is sort of unproven. So God has these values in the book, and certainly one of the values that God has is justice, treating people rightly and righteously according to their deeds.
But he doesn't treat Job
justly.
I mean,
God has that value in the book of Job. But he also has the value of, he cares about loyalty, right? And Job's loyalty, this is unproven in a sense, because he's never been made to suffer. So, take it all, this is the question, if you take it all away, will he still serve you? In other words, is he righteous, or is he pious? Is he faithful? Does he worship you because you give him all this stuff, you surround his life with blessings? And so, and there's also this other theological component where I think God really has to find out about Job. He has a confidence in his character, and he seems certain that Job will prove faithful. And yet, there's some finding out that we have to do, and I think God has to do as well. So he values loyalty, so he puts him to the test. I mean, there's the question of why is Job suffering is answered right at the beginning. It's because he's being tested, and we know that as readers. And I think this is important for our conversation about grief, though, is that Job never knows that. Even to the end of the book, Job never knows that he's suffering because he's being tested. So when he delivers his complaint against God, he is right in some ways about being treated unjustly. I mean, God will even say, you've incited me against him for no reason. I mean, there's sort of a reason of testing, but as it turns out, because he's been faithful, there is no good reason to put him to the test.
So, that kind of bothers me, as a counselor, somebody who tries to help people walk through their suffering and their grief, I can't imagine giving them an answer that maybe God is just testing your loyalty. Yeah. So, how do we reconcile that? That seems a little frustrating that we might see God take the side of loyalty over justice.
Yeah, God is God. We don't always like that. And I wouldn't say the prologue of the book of Job is sort of what we should pin our systematic theology of suffering on, but it does give us just an additional category of sometimes it's testing, and sometimes the book of Job doesn't take away that category of people reaping what they sow, right? Wicked people getting suffering because of their wickedness, or righteous people being blessed because of their righteousness. I think the book of Job still kind of upholds that as the kind of the dominant way that God usually works. The big thing is the book does not help us diagnose suffering. Like it doesn't, if you're suffering, maybe it gives you a category of, sometimes people get tested, but it doesn't help you say this is a test, or it doesn't help you say, or others diagnose and say, you're reaping what you're sowing, or just suffering that happens in the world.
Well, I would also like to just maybe take the perspective too of maybe answering the question of why isn't the purpose of the book of Job.
Yeah.
Nor is there ever going to be a satisfactory why as to why people suffer. So even if Job did know what was behind the veil and why God allowed him to suffer, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make it okay, right?
Right.
Which seems to be a pretty, I think in my field, that seems to be a pretty strong pursuit of people. I want to hang on to some reason as to why I'm going through this, why this loss happened. Sometimes we blame ourselves, sometimes we blame others.
Yeah.
But the why question is such a strong one, and yet it's
Right.
evident in the book of Job, at least from what I see, that that's not God's intention, is to give us a why to our suffering.
Right. Why is part of asking that question, is part of lament, right? But it's not what the book as a whole is doing as a literary piece.
What
but
is it
you
doing?
You do see that in Job's life. I mean, he's asking that question, why the friends are asking for chapter upon chapter. They're dealing with, in part at least, the why, and also seeking resolution to the suffering. But I wanted to hit really briefly today on the kind of the formality of Job's grief, at least when he's being, because he doesn't ask that why question. He just, when he hears of his losses, he goes through this kind of formal form of grief, right? He tears his robes, he shaves his head, he falls on his face and he worships, and then he confesses faithfully, I came into this world with nothing, I will leave this world with nothing. Blessed be the name of the Lord, right? That's kind of the dominant story that gets told about Job, and we might have to pick up on this next time. But I want us to kind of think about my question for you maybe next time will be the formality of grief. What's in that process, and actually, if anybody out there want to chime in on this, what good is a ritual mourning? What does it do for a person? Because there's a formality to what he's doing, and also a formality and a reality of his praise. And I want to recognize that as his first experiment in grief.
Yeah.
So maybe we can chime in on that, or to pick up there next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the really important things to remember is, even in the formality of grief, when we are seeing that experiment, the first experiment, using the formal to begin the grief process, saying, blessed be the name of the Lord, is one of the most difficult things to say in the midst of suffering, right?
Right.
And so I think that's going to be a really good conversation for us to have. I think people will be interested in that, because not everybody's going to be in that place when in the midst of loss.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, that's good for this week. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.